Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. I am not producer Richard, as you can probably tell from my voice. I am Josh Gill, and across the internets from me is the doctor himself.
Hello.
What is going on, Doc? How is your week? What are you reading this? Okay, you always ask me when I come on what my pull list is. What are you reading right now?
Oh, geez, Louise. Well, I mean, my pull list is usually a few weeks behind. Just it takes a while for things to get to me. But Human Target started back up, so I'm reading that and enjoying that. I think Wonder Woman since Death Metal has been like a kind of sleeper great book that I think a lot of people aren't giving enough credit to, but it's been like consistently really strong since Death Metal. Flash, the Jeremy Adams Flash run has been awesome and like fun and wacky. Like the most recent issue I read was the multiversal wrestling match.
Yes,
so fun, so good. I'm having a really good time with that one. Yeah, I think. Well, and then obviously, like World's Finest. Those are like kind of like real like highlight books for me.
Sure.
Nightwing's been good, but I'm kind of like, I need a resolution on this like Heartless thing. Like I thought the build up with Blockbuster was good, but now I kind of like I need this story to wrap. I need Heartless done.
It has been a very slow burn and
super slow. Yeah,
I agree. It needs to come to a conclusion. Did you read the Human Target one shot where all the JSA members told of their first experience with him?
No, I haven't read that one. I don't know if it just hasn't come in for me yet or if I forgot to order it, but I haven't read that one yet. No.
Got it. It was really good. It was really good.
Nice.
Well, yes, there's really no good transition to this, and I'm definitely not practiced at it, but we do have some news.
Oh,
that's a very happy sound for a very sad piece of news.
That's the only way I do it.
This is true. I guess for those of you who are not aware, we lost Kevin Conroy last week.
Yeah, we can't find him. We can't find him anywhere.
We cannot. 66 years old, and he has officially won the world's longest running game of hide and seek.
Oh, yeah. No, he I think it was like cancer or something, but yeah. Kevin Conroy, longtime voice of Batman. I mean, he's voiced Batman in various animation and video game properties, and even live action, little Titch, for like over 30 years, basically, or 30 years, or whatever the actual time works out to. Because Batman the Animated Series, New Adventures, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, the Arkham games, a bunch of additional animated movies like the Justice League Doom, Batman, Superman, Public Enemies, like all of those ones are still Kevin Conroy as Batman. He's been the voice forever. He's like a super iconic Batman.
Defined Batman for a generation of people. He was my first Batman.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly, he's definitely the voice I hear. When I read Batman, or if I watch an animated thing and it's not his voice, it always takes me a second. And that's not to say I don't like other people's takes on Batman, because I do, but I think I'm always ready for it to be his voice. And also he's just like a very sweet, kind man. He's like,
he really was.
Didn't get canceled, and like our most iconic Batman was a gay man. Like that story that he wrote in DC Pride about like how he found in Batman
that.
Yeah, and how like he found in Batman someone who also had like a public identity and a private identity, and how to reconcile those things. And he lived through watching like the decimation of his generation, like to HIV and AIDS and stuff like that. And but he's still such like a sweet and like kind man. And yeah, it's very, very sad that he's gone. Yeah.
Well, me like you said yourself, like he was the voice of Batman for generations. I mean, voiced him everywhere, and specifically voiced him in Justice League Unlimited, which was supposed to be this week's topic. However,
Yes.
due to scheduling conflicts and whatnot, we are running another Fanstravaganza.
Yeah,
So
we're doing a mailbag. I can't do a JLU episode without Jaffe. I think
absolutely not.
that's like Twitter law for how I mean, not that anyone's enforcing Twitter law right now, but
It is Doc's law.
yeah,
Doc's
yeah,
law that
and
we cannot do JLU without Jaffe.
we know how strongly I feel about rules.
Yes.
So yeah, we're doing a mailbag episode, a Fanstravaganza, if you will. I almost called this episode mailbag, and I was like, we used to do these. What did we call these? And I had to look back because I haven't, outside of Fanagar or Docmas, we haven't done a mailbag episode in like years.
You are right. And I honestly can't remember the last time we did one. So I guess let's dive into it. And
Sure.
speaking of, let's just go right to the lawless land itself. Let's go to Twitter.
That's Twitter. Fuck you, Elon. That's the new part of the
Oh, is that could be how we're going to end the Twitter drop from now on? All right.
Well, I mean, he's definitely listening because like this is a guy who cannot like not search his name. I'm sure he'll find it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, using his SpaceLink satellites to search for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Chiming in from our favorite religious representative, Chris Chan.
Chris Chan.
Can Harley evolve as a character beyond the Batman Joker Harley love triangle story without completely redefining her?
I mean, personally, I feel like she has. I feel like the Joker thing's kind of over for her. I mean, and truly, I don't know that I've ever felt that it's a love. I know what Chris is saying, that the love triangle is technically like Joker Batman, Joker Harley, but I've never felt that there was a Harley. Oh yeah, I've never felt really that strongly about a Harley Batman thing. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's done. Like when I look at what's the most recent like real Joker reference for Harley, and it's probably like Fear State or Joker War even. You know, and the closest we get is, you know, Harley fights Punchline, right? It's the ex-girlfriend in the new one, which is like, that has that kind of thing from like 90s action movies, which is like, let the women fight while the protagonist and the villain fight. But even there, it's not she doesn't revert. It's not a I should be with Mr. J sort of thing. It's a like, you absolute dumb girl. You think you're different. You think that he cares about you. You think it's not my situation. Like,
yeah, I mean, ever since, what was it, Jimmy Connor and Amanda Palmiotti, or Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor, there we go. I mean, since their run on Harley, I think they were the first solo Harley series where we took Harley away from the Joker, and ever since then, I mean, she has developed into what I think is a really strong character on her own, and developing her own cast of supporting characters and separating herself from the Bat family.
And I mean, across media, you know, Harley and Ivy are solidifying more and more as a thing. There was that thing where like they were like they're friends. It's like, come on, just say it. Like, you're not fooling anybody. Oh, that's a book I should have mentioned up top, talking about what I'm reading. That Poison Ivy book is incredible.
Yes,
and you know, that book, though it follows Poison Ivy, there's a lot of references to Harley, and obviously it's a whole thing about Harley and Ivy and Queen Ivy and the gardener or whatever her name is, like all that stuff that was happening in Eden during Fear State. and Joker War and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, to me, Harley is past that. I think to a certain extent, you never fully leave it because she is still kind of, depending on who's writing her and if it's a solo series and if she's the Suicide Squad or whatever, she's still manic, all that kind of stuff. But like, she's more or less heroic now. She's working with the Bat family and stuff like that. If anything, if there's a romance or a dalliance or something for her outside of Ivy, the closest thing lately is Ghostmaker, not Batman. Like I think she's fully extricated from the Batman Joker relationship. I don't think Joker would think about her at all, and I don't think Batman considers her part of that anymore either. Like I think that triangle doesn't exist, basically.
Nailed it. So, moving on from Adam talking Superman, does Lobo have any notable weaknesses?
Ooh, the main man. There. So Lobo as a Zarnian has crazy powers, but Lobo is also unique. Like he kills his species. They can be killed. Like he's the last Zarnian, right? And he kills the like imposter Lobo from the New 52 and things like that. But I think it's stated explicitly that because he kills his race with like a science experiment. I think it's some sort of like poison animal, like some sort of crazy genetic experiment or whatever that he does. And I think it's stated explicitly that he's immune to the toxin that like wipes out his race. And I don't know if he was already immune to it or if he becomes immune to it because he was making it, or I don't know what the full thing is, but that's like the one thing that we know for a fact kills Zarnians. It doesn't kill Lobo.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about his regeneration ability, and he can regenerate from what is essentially a single cell of his body.
Yeah.
So over the years, because I am who I am, I've put a lot of thought into how one would go about killing Lobo.
Oh, let's have it.
And you have first, I imagine, separating the head from the body. Because I have a hard time. Okay, is there canonical where the body can regrow the head?
Yes.
My theory now falls apart.
I think it happens in that Steve Orlando, Ivan Rice, Justice League of America, where Batman has that right in the Rebirth era, where it's like Killer Frost and Vixen, Black Canary, and Lobo and the Atom.
Justice League
Batman,
of America.
It's either in that or just the thing that just leads into that, which is, I think, Justice League versus Suicide Squad. In one of those, Batman blows up Lobo's head, but he does it to get rid of the bomb, like the implant that's in there. Right. And then Lobo regrows his head. So I do think that can happen. I mean, technically, New 52 Lobo cut off the head of original Lobo. That was like in that first issue or whatever. And original Lobo obviously came back. I think we could reinterpret it as like a weakness doesn't necessarily have to be like a thing that poisons you or kills you. It could just be like a downside of your power. And I mean, the downside, I suppose, is that, well, it's weird. He seems to have a certain amount of control over how he regenerates. Like, he gets bloodied up all the time, but the pools of his blood don't just keep spawning Lobos. But in Death Metal, he cuts himself deliberately and makes a bunch of Lobos out of the blood to help Wonder Woman. So there's a certain amount of like, he seems to be able to control it, but I think there is the hazard of he's the main man. And if you accidentally make more Lobos, good luck killing them and not having them regenerate. Like, I think there is a slight risk to Lobo of that.
Or is it like multiplex where the copies can be killed, but the original, like the copies can't keep reproducing, but the original is the only one that can.
I mean, that's probably the way when it's been done that they treat it, but I don't see a reason why that should be true. But that's probably how they do it, just so that they don't accidentally start like an infinite Lobo plague. Like there's, I think that's part of it. But Lobo also, he can't go to heaven or hell. He's kicked out of both. So his, like, even if you manage to kill his body, his spirit just kind of wanders, and then eventually he'll just get a body back.
I feel like the only way at this point is maybe Dr. Manhattan just completely de-atomizes him.
Yeah, I mean, your reality sundering things is kind of all you can really do to Lobo. I mean, I guess his weakness. Sorry, here we're thinking too literally. We're thinking about like his physical body. His weakness is his affinity for space dolphins. He loves space dolphins. He loves money. You could do the thing where if he's got a contract, you can give him a bigger contract. I like there are ways to get out of Lobo killing you, but it's usually about presenting him with something that he cares about, which is very little. Yeah.
All right. So next question from Bray Dawn, registered trademark, the Soapy Donkey. Who are the greatest Green Lantern villains, and why is it the Guardians of the Universe?
I mean, listen, there's a very compelling argument for it being the Guardians of the Universe. My question for you, though, is beyond, that the Guardians are like constantly fucking things up and fucking them over or whatever, what is your favorite kind of Green Lantern adversary? Is it something like the Guardians where it's like institutional, or do you just love Sinestro, or do you love Sonar, or like Dr. Polaris? Or
I mean, I think if I'm looking at Green Lanterns as the Green Lantern core, it's got to be the Manhunters for me. Just something that is so terrifyingly overwhelming that it takes the entire Corps to come together to defeat, or the Black Lantern Corps. One of those things is just the overwhelming odds are against them.
Totally, and the Manhunters, the like emotionless like robots who are trying to kill all life. The Black Lanterns, obviously the zombies trying to kill all life. Both kind of come back to the Guardians kind of going like, oh fuck, oh shit, like
right.
They have a oh fuck oh shit, nobody can know about the Blackest Night thing, and they try and hide it, and it still happens, and they succumb to fear, and they don't like prevent this prophecy from happening. And with the Manhunters, they were like, it's a cold, emotionless robot. What could possibly go wrong? And then the robots reach the logical conclusion that like crime and evil comes from these like emotional beings. If you kill organic emotional beings, you get rid of that. And then the Guardians go, oh shit, oh fuck. And they have to make the Green Lantern Corps. It's not both of those aren't necessarily malicious, but it's certainly like their incompetence or their self-righteousness that like, well, we're here, I guess we're in charge, is like a frequent antagonism to what the Green Lanterns are doing,
Right. So so here's another one for it. In the first two stories that really come to mind are Tom King's Omega Men and Far Sector. And I think the thing that I like about both of those is it puts the Green Lanterns, both of them, in a position where the answer is not a construct and punching somebody. It puts them in a position where they're having to battle something that can't actually be like physically fought. They're battling ideals, they're battling injustice. I think those are the stories, especially with Green Lantern, who their whole thing is just using their will to overcome the odds. They're put in a position where they have to use their will in very creative ways.
Yeah, and I mean,
those are the villains I think I'm drawn to.
I think that's probably a true pattern for like all cop stories. Like a cop story that's about a cop who shoots a cool gun, it can only be, I mean, certainly it's like it's decreasingly cool in general. But even if we're just talking about badass cop gets the bat, like that kind of 80s action mentality, those movies only go so far, right? What are the most compelling cop stories? And it's the one where it's like, is the system flawed? How do we beat this guy that like can we can't just shoot him. He's got we don't have the evidence. Like the better cop stories are the ones where it's like about like doing the work, like actually
Yeah.
policing, not just like shooting people down. And I think in the Green Lantern sense, instead of making like a big fist and punching, when you have to like, in Far Sector, that idea of like these three kind of societies so-called don't indulge in emotion or whatever, and then you realize there's this whole underbelly, where like they're covering up like a deeply oppressive state, like those digital people are like oppressed there and stuff like that. Obviously in Omega Men, like the whole Vega sector thing, it's been retconned to death, but like that's the Guardians being like, well, we fucked up with Larfleeze, we'll just not police over here. Like it's such like a like LAPD withdraws from Compton kind of like, so now you've like forsaken your own responsibility and stuff like that. So those stories, yeah, they kind of like put the failures of the system and the institution of the Green Lantern Corps and stuff like that on display, where it's like they've given me a tool that's kind of useless here and an authority that is not recognized. Now what? Like, how do I actually do the thing I believe in?
Okay, so turning you back around on you, who do you think is or are the greatest Green Lantern villains?
I mean, it's really hard for me to say anything other than Sinestro. Obviously, it's like there's a wealth of stories. I love the character development over the years. I love the hither and thither of Sinestro. I a character that believes he's right and sometimes is even on the side of the angels, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to argue with Sinestro. I I might throw. I would even maybe throw Atrocitus in there. I know it's easy to. I think Atrocitus might be an easy character to shit on because it's like, oh, like big scary red guy and his name's Atrocitus, and like, oh, the Red Lanterns are rage. But I think if you dig into Atrocitus, like this is also someone deeply wronged by the Guardians, by the Corps, you know, and again, he's confronting the institution itself. Now, obviously, he's turned to rage and it's corrupted him, but there's like a magic element, and you bring in this kind of old idea of the five inversions and that. Like, I think Atrocitus is sort of interesting. I don't hate him as a Green Lantern villain.
No, and that the Red Lantern series in the New 52 that featured Guy and Atrocitus, that was a great series, and it dug into his background a lot. It was solid.
That Red Lantern series is like secretly pretty good, like I think
Yeah.
again, very very easy to write it off. Like I think wrote it off, and then I went back and read it. I was like, oh, this is actually, I like this.
Right. From Truth, Justice, and Hope, which do you prefer? The Injustice League, which is usually focused on crimes and or revenge, or the Snyder-Tinian Legion of Doom, which focused on an almost spiritual ideological conflict with the Justice League?
Yeah, so Richard and I talked about this when we did our Injustice League episode during October, which is that, to my mind, the way things are right now, there are kind of three tiers to like the main villain teams in DC. Your secret society of supervillains is a bunch of D-listers who like need like a co-space, like they help each other, like they need to share resources or whatever. But it's like we just want to like knock off banks and stuff like that. And we just need help, and that's the secret society of supervillains. The Injustice League is like people with like specific grudges, and it's like at this time we're gonna kill those fuckers. And then the Legion of Doom is a more, kind of like high concept, like we could take or leave the Justice League. We might hate them, we might not, but they're just wrong. Ultimately, justice is meaningless and stuff like that. We should be self-serving. But Legion of Doom kind of has these like higher kind of cosmic goals, and I like that that's explored a bit in Dark Crisis, where they're or in the lead up rather to Dark Crisis, over in Deathstroke Inc. Where they're like, we just want to like do crimes. I'm fucking tired of like Lex and Grodd and Sinestro like ripping the fabric of reality. We just want to like make money. And I kind of love that discrepancy between the Secret Society and the Legion of Doom. And even in Dark Crisis, when Deathstroke is like on behalf of the Great Darkness using the Secret Society to like start a crisis, it's still pretty like he's just like making crooks show up places and do crimes and like attack people. They're not fighting like the anti-mod, like they're not doing that kind of stuff. And I kind of like that for them. In that setup, do you have a preference?
Oh, I very much prefer the Secret Society in that aspect of it.
Right.
It's the rogues, right? As somebody who's always gravitated
Right.
towards the Flash and loved the rogues, like it's just that idea of like, no, we just want to rob a bank and run away.
Yeah, totally.
We're not we like the world. We're not trying to destroy it. We just want to live our life.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I like that too. There's something kind of funny about someone being like, I'm just Monocle. I can't like I'm not gonna fight Superman. I just want to do my thing.
Yeah. Oh,
I do like the cosmics. I like the cosmic stuff, obviously, because I'm a real like lore whore. But I think it only works if you know that somewhere else there's the group of crooks. You need those guys over there to make the other stuff worthwhile, because otherwise you do that thing that superhero comics do all the time, which is like they forget the like day-to-day thing. It's like they're always fighting each other, they're always saving the universe, and then you go like, didn't we do this to like stop like slumlords and like drug dealers and things like that? And you kind of lose that element if you do too many of the crisis kind of things. So I do like knowing that there's like just crooks out there. I mean, God, that Rogues, it's not the Secret Society, but that Rogues Black Label series, I just finished it. I just got the last issue. I love that one. The like one last job kind of vibe of it all. I love that book.
That was a very good book. All right. From Travis Campbell, what are your thoughts on the current direction and lineup in DC Comics? And where do you think or hope it will go in the next few years?
Why don't you start with that? What you asked me a bit of what I was reading, but what do you think of like the lineup, the direction? What are you enjoying? What are you kind of dreading, or what do you wish that they were doing differently?
I've been really enjoying the Superman corner of DC Comics lately.
Yeah.
And I think looking at it, what the thing that I've really been digging is the breadth, the wide-ranging breadth of character, the inclusion of all these different people, right? And telling their stories and giving them time to shine. And I mean, yeah, Clark is there. He's the center pillar of it all, but we're getting John, we're getting John and Natasha, we're getting Kara, we're getting Connor. I mean, we're getting the whole family and telling these unique stories. And I find that really fun. I've also really been enjoying, like, not just in the Superman book, but that's one specifically, the art. I feel like DC is really diving into more unique art styles across its books and giving artists more freedom and reign to do what they want. And that lends a lot to, I mean, as a visual medium, that lends a lot to the storytelling that's going on and the direction they're going. I know they talked there was big talk there with Brian Michael Bendis coming in of doing these more creator driven stories and giving creators more freedom to tell the stories they want. And I think y'all hit on it a bit with Ron V when he was on, and like he had this idea and pitched it and it worked, right? And he had that character in mind. And so I really hope that over the next handful of years, we continue to get these new characters, interesting characters, seeing different sides of them, different angles from different experiences, and giving creators and artists more and more freedom to tell the story in the way they think fits that character best, and not this is what's going to make us the most money.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you're totally right. The Superman corner of things has been so strong. I mean, Action Comics, that War World saga was great. I loved that. I really like Superman Son of Kal-El. I like that Dreamer gets to work in there, bring some of that in. I like that it's like an ongoing like queer book, like that's some of those things I'm appreciating. I'm excited for the Adventures of Superman, for that book to change to Adventures of Superman with John there. Obviously the big shift in the last few years is that like very few books just start as ongoings. Most of them are like, I have a story, it's 6 issues, and they do it. Or I have a story, it's 12 issues, and they do it. But very few get brought on as ongoings. There's a whole host of reasons for that, and I bet a bunch of them are really, really solid, really strong. But what I think is the hardest part of that, and it's not just that everyone's kind of begging for scraps at Batman's table. It's not just that. I think the knock-on effect that we haven't necessarily fully seen the end game of is that I think it makes continuity harder. And that's not always that important. But when Blue Beetle only gets 6 issues or something, and then you don't see him for a while, and then he shows up, then you kind of go like, unless they're specifically referencing a thing that happened in that book, you go, did the book happen? And again, that's not ultimately that important. You should just read it and like it or not like it. But eventually all of these things come back around and you're back in events again. And I think it's a lot harder for like editorially to track and maintain the continuities of characters. And like, well, Ivy was here doing this stuff, and then she went off on her own in that book, but she's got to come back over here. I've been surprised thus far at how good it's been, because I think it's a harder way to do it than just to have some ongoings where you see characters more regularly. Like the fact that both Alec and Levi are in Dark Crisis surprised me. The fact that the Poison Ivy book references what was happening in like Batman and Detective Comics surprised me. But it feels like, I don't know why. I just have this sense. It feels like someone holding the reins of a bunch of horses starting to run wild. And it's like, you could do it for a bit, but I think it's going to make managing continuity a lot harder. And I really think of Jeff Johns this way, where they're like, yeah, do your Flashpoint Batman thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's like making like continuity changes and stuff. And then like, it's affecting his little corner of books, the Justice Society and that. It's like, but we're going to have to deal with that, because Alan is also over here and he's supposed to be doing the totality. He's supposed to be part of, he's in Dark Crisis, and all of these things are like, they will tie together. Someone will tie them together. It always happens. But it is funny where it's like, yeah, go off, like write your book, whatever. And then they look away for a bit and they look back, and John's is like, am I in charge again? And they go, no, damn it. Like, it does kind of feel like you can lose the thread of who is kind of guiding the content. Maybe that's what I mean. I think you lose the sense of the guiding direction of the continuity, not necessarily specific events and whether or not they happened, but you kind of lose a sense of like, we're all following your lead, like especially without a Justice League book right now, which is deliberate, but there's a few components of it, and I think one of the components is having just a bunch of minis that essentially just have to be their own story. They're not really, broadly speaking, interconnected. And so because of that, they could fit anywhere in the timeline, or more or less, like they're a lot more fluid. And I think it makes it harder to paint a picture of like what has happened the last 3 years,
Oh, for sure. No, it'll be fun. It'll be, at the very least, it'll be an interesting ride.
Like I issue to issue and book to book, it 100%, it doesn't matter at all. You just read a thing, you like it, you don't like it, it's fine. But it's when you kind of do the thing I like to do, and I go like, let's look at what happened like over the course of like between this event and that event, and then you kind of go like, oh man, this is like, it's not even that stuff contradicts each other. It's just like it's that it's so disconnected. Like one book has the thread, and everyone else is just like, whoa, I was doing my own thing over here. And it's fine to read as you're going, but you kind of lose that sense of the richer world. And like that's the thing I really like in the Mark Waid, Dan Mora World's Finest, is even in that one book, there's a real concerted effort to bring in other characters, to like show the richer world. And I feel like that piece is kind of missing right now. And maybe when the Justice League book comes back, when we get a Justice League title, it'll feel a little bit more like you could do your own thing, and whenever you want to join in on continuity stuff, look at Justice League, see what they're doing. But I think right now it just feels a little kind of...
Yeah. Right, we're going to leave Twitter and head on over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram, take some questions and answer them.
Yeah. First question on Instagram from Cursed Blob. What are the best entry-level books for people who are not too familiar with Wonder Woman?
Oh, nothing before George Perez in the 80s.
I was going to say New 52 Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as a jumping on point, it's very clean.
Yes.
It's a very contained take on Wonder Woman, especially if you just do the Azzarello Chang run. It's a pretty contained vision of Wonder Woman and a pretty contained story. And because Wonder Woman is a lot more leaning on the Greek thing, it's a crash course in some of that stuff. Not everything is still canon, but I think you get a decent sense of it. The only weird thing is that it's Azzarello writing a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that I like that run. I acknowledge its faults, but I like that New 52 run. I know people there's some people that really hate it. I certainly don't feel that way about it. But it's a little weird. But yeah, I think you're right. That's a good jumping on point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does a really good job of setting up what is now Wonder Woman's, for like quote unquote canonical origin.
Yep.
It sets up her history. It gives good background on the Amazons, the family dynamic. Yeah, as a jumping on point, it introduces you to most of the major players in Wonder Woman's current life.
Yeah. I mean, likewise, I think the rebirth, like the Rucka return.
Oh yeah,
is a really solid one. Like I said, the George Perez, like starts as just a 4-issue one, but the Perez run of Wonder Woman from the 80s, from Post Crisis, I guess, is a very strong starting point, because that's really the start of the Diana we know now. Everything before that's a little wishy-washy. It's not that the Amazon stuff wasn't part of it, but the way we conceive of Wonder Woman now really starts in the 80s.
Yeah. All right. So next question from Blast Past Cast. Is there a Batman DC equivalent of Marvel's 2099 series?
Right. So, I mean,
I guess maybe some of the Batman Beyond stuff, or DC 1 Million would be the closest.
I'm going to throw two things out there. Batman Beyond, I think you're right. Certainly in terms of like the kind of like the Matrix inspired neo future kind of vibes. I mean, I haven't read 2099, but anytime I've encountered it, it feels very much like it has a sort of neo Gotham kind of. I mean, I think it was probably around before Batman Beyond, but I get those vibes from Spider-Man 2099. Very kind of cyberpunky sort of thing. So I think Batman Beyond on vibes and on kind of setting and stuff like that is probably pretty close. But it's not set quite as far in the future. Like the Beyond timeline, I know obviously timelines have shifted over time, but in general, Batman Beyond is meant to be roughly like 35, 40 years in the future. From whenever you decide the present is, Beyond is about 40 years, which by the 2099 standard is like only half or less the amount of time that needs to pass. The other one I wanted to throw out there, maybe just, I don't know much about Miguel O'Hara. I don't know much about the character of Spidey 2099. So someone will probably correct me here. But we've talked about it before that like DC's Spider-Man analog is more like Blue Beetle, like a teenager who has to balance school and friends and superheroing, and they have this thing kind of like thrust upon them that's a bit of a curse, and they don't, all these kind of things, and like Jaime Reyes specifically, Blue Beetle. I mean, not to mention that Jaime Reyes and Miguel O'Hara are both like Latinx characters, but yeah, I mean, I do think in general that's a Spidey thing, but I don't know if Miguel O'Hara is like meant to be fun the way Peter Parker is, or if he's totally different, and so that doesn't track. But in general, my Spidey comparisons are between Blue Beetle and Batman Beyond, essentially. Have you read 2099? Do you know anything about it?
No, I haven't. Miguel O'Hara is about the extent of that what I know, and a lot of like fan art combining Miguel O'Hara and Terry McGinnis.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah.
Then I guess that's the answer.
I mean, I see those two teamed up a lot in fan art. Whether it be like squaring off like a Marvel versus DC thing or a teaming up thing. Like I've seen a lot of that floating around the Reddits.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, if they ever did another Amalgam Comics, I guess we'd get our answer, right? It would probably be some sort of like Spidey Beyond or something like that, and it would be, Miguel McGinnis, but it would be Peter Parker sitting in the cave or like whatever the thing is. They'd come up with some sort of crazy mashup of them, yeah.
Well, we're going to leave Instagram now and head on over to the email.
Checking the email. I love that you caught yourself there.
Hope it's from a female.
Oh, what the people listening at home didn't see is that right on cue, as you were supposed to say, hope it's from a female. I saw your partner walk through in the background. I saw your eyes go wide, and then you muted yourself. That was perfect timing. That was incredible.
I guess a little behind the scenes information. I am recording this on our 2-year anniversary.
Josh, why did you say yes to this? What are you doing?
I asked her first. It's fine.
Okay, Josh.
Email from Luke Davidson or Thomas gives Martha Pearl necklace at gmail.com.
Jesus.
A rapper named Tech9 has a song called Harvey Dent about how his fans called him two-faced for evolving his style over time. I love it and wish Two-Face was utilized more in DC Comics. Side note, I'm very proud of myself for coming up with my email address.
As well you should be.
Yeah, agreed.
How do you feel about Two-Face?
Have
Two-Face. How do you
you?
feel about Two-Face?
How do I feel about Two Face? Have you read Task Force Z?
I haven't read Task Force Z. I've heard, because
Okay,
initially I was like, why would I read this? And then I keep hearing these things and I'm like, it's actually like pretty fun. It's pretty good.
it is, and I asked very specifically because Two Face is a major character, or
Interesting.
Harvey is a major character through that. Uh, he, I mean, spoiler alerts, I guess a bit, but he sets up a rival suicide squad to Amanda Waller
Right.
and recruits Jason to run it
Right.
and lead it. Very, very good book. Great Two Face story
Right.
all through. Uh, but I mean, I agree with this. Like, I wish I like Two Face as a character and would love to see him utilized more. I mean, I know he's kind of been around since this, but there was a book. It was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was part of the All Star line, Batman All Star or All Star Batman.
Oh yeah, All-Star
That
Batman.
was
Yeah, yeah.
All Star Batman. That told it would focus a lot on Batman and Two Face and their history together, Harvey and Bruce's history growing up, and that is cemented as just one of the best Batman Two Face stories that I've read.
I Here's my confession. I tapped out of that book because I can't with John Romita Jr. I just
Yes, agreed.
I hate his art so much. And I feel bad saying it. I like he's like a legend. His dad's a legend and everything. And I can't look at it. It's hideous. Everything he worked on, at least in DC, I look at it, I just go like, who approved this? I
That was
really
the
hate it.
last. Yeah, that was the last JRJR book I read. He
So
about
I
ruined
kind of tapped
Superman
out of
for
that,
me.
even though I was enjoying the Two Face thing. I was just like, I can't with this book. I did not too recently, but relatively. I read the Batman One Bad Day Two Face special, which is quite good. You know, again, that
Yeah,
idea of like the two personalities, and can Harvey ever like actually put Two Face behind him, or Two Face or Big Bad Harv in the cartoon, since we were talking about Kevin Conroy.
oh
Um,
yeah,
I like Two Face. I think it's interesting that this is true of a lot of Batman villains, is they're huge villains in general because Batman is huge, but most of them kind of can't play on the DC universe scale. You know, like you'll see Two-Face in a secret society or on whatever. Like he's in there, you know, he's on an Injustice League or something like that. But truly, he's just like a horribly scarred man with guns. Like he's not, you know, he's not fucking around with like Grodd and Cheetah and stuff like that for the most part. You know, Penguin is kind of like that. He's a little different because there's sort of the like he has the network, the the arms dealer sort of thing. But I kind of like the idea of the Task Force Z thing where he like kind of takes on a bigger like a maybe or he's taking on something outside his station, you know, trying to take
yeah.
on Waller or something. He's like, no. Like stick to like hitting like the Second National Bank. You know what I mean? Like know your lane. I do kind of there's something about that that I enjoy because he is a fascinating character, and it's you know he's obviously made fascinating because of that relationship, and so he usually stays pretty insular. You know, and even in Gotham Central, the Two-Face stuff with Renee in there, that's still like basically about, you know, and the cops used to work with Harvey, and he has like it's all about just his personal relationships ultimately. But I do kind of like the idea of him having like a or attempting a slightly like bigger impact. There's something I kind of like about that.
Yeah. So we're heading on over to Reddit now,
Where
where
everyone's
everybody.
nice and no one's ever mean.
That's right. First question on Reddit from Diaper Gal Kate: are there any known superheroes who have a fetish and or kink? Any theories? I bet Bruce loves bondage and cat ears.
Yeah, I mean,
That's not a secret.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I mentioned Human Target up top, but sort of like a reveal through this Human Target series is that Martian Manhunter and Fire had a kind of thing where it started with like she was helping him kind of get a bit of control over his like psychological weakness to fire, but like it becomes a sort of like fetish thing where it's like fire is the thing that hurts him, and there's kind of like they have a sort of torrid kind of affair or whatever through it. That was the first thing that came to mind.
Mr. Miracle and Barda are totally into BDSM, and she is absolutely the dom.
Yes, I mean, and that's in that book, but it's also kind of the funny thing of like, well, I guess it's not funny. Sorry, that's the wrong word. There's a sort of interesting thing that like the man who can escape from anything still is like he'll like willingly submit to Barda, right? It's like the one person he'd sacrifice his freedom for, which I guess is ultimately kind of part of the theme of that book too, is that he would sacrifice like his freedom or his life to have that kind of family thing, right? That's why he doesn't go with Metron when Metron appears at the end, when the kind of vision gets shattered, right? There's something kind of fascinating in there. I think Plastic Man very obviously has a sort of like voyeur kind of thing going on. Speaking of Barda, there's that bit in that JLA run where he's her dress, and she's like, "Hey, who put this dress in my room? It fits great." And they're like, "We didn't put a dress in your room." You know, it's really transgressive. Like it's not okay. No. But he very clearly has that kind of thing where he likes to hide and he likes to peep, and like, you know, even that Kyle Baker Plastic Man thing, he turns himself into like a bike seat and stuff. Like he has that kind of peep show, upskirt, voyeur kind of thing to him.
Very pervy.
Yes, extremely. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I found a thing. I just want to I'm just going to read a little bit here. I found a thing that is not like a specific answer. It's not canonical, but apparently there's this book called, hang on. There's a book called The Erotic Lives of the Superheroes. It's by someone named Marco Mangasola. This is like a book from Europe that is like, it's not nonfiction, it's fiction in a world where like Marvel and DC characters exist together. I found out about it from Women Write About Comics, the website. And basically, like, it's just, they just make this story about these aging male heroes, and it's sort of about like, it's supposed to be an examination of like masculinity and stuff like that, but it does have like aspects of like kink and stuff like that. And I'm just reading here. Apparently Robin Fists Batman, that's in there in that book. Mystique obviously does a lot of like personal shape shifting and stuff like that for like hookups with strangers. Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, does a thing known as knotting, where he inflates his penis within his partner. Apparently, this is a very yeah. Oh, and then sorry, hang on. Reed Richards wraps his penis around her body like a boa constrictor so he can come on her face, and pleasuring her in an Edward Penis Hands reenactment. This is a book that apparently the writer couldn't be sued for because of some sort of gap in copyright law or something like that. It's a very fascinating article. I haven't read the book, but it's very interesting to read about.
It's available on Amazon, so we can fix that.
Yeah.
I'm not looking that up right now. I'm not buying that book on Amazon. Moving on.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, there are some things out there. I don't know that many superheroes just come out and say, "This is my kink," or
Yeah.
things like that. But like, yeah, I mean, Batman has clearly got a leather thing. Obviously, that's not a surprise. Yeah, I think it's not a stretch to say Plastic Man is kind of like a voyeur. Mr. Miracle and Wonder Woman both have the sort of loving submission sort of thing. I think there's a few things you can guess there that are not surprises that
Yeah.
make sense.
Midnighter. Absolutely BDSM.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
just Apollo just doesn't. I don't know. That's the weird one because Apollo does not seem the type at all.
But I mean, the is Midnighter the top in that relationship? Because I'm not convinced he is.
No, I think you're right.
I think that's the one like area where he lets his guard down, right? Like I think Apollo is more like, if there's a Dom sub thing, I think Apollo's more on the Dom side. When it comes to that, Midnighter is, kick your ass in the streets, and I think he's like a little more like open in the sheets, if you know what I mean. Like that's certainly the vibe I think I've gotten from the stuff I've read. I don't know if that's true in the old Wildstorm stuff, or if I'm just going off the kind of relationship I've seen since they've joined
Yeah.
like the DC universe. But
Well, moving on from Draco Folly, what was the best DC Marvel crossover? See, we've talked about a couple. We mentioned the Amalgam comics,
yeah,
and
so
we
Amalgam is
mentioned
the one where they get squished together. So you get like Dark Claw, he's Logan Wayne, and it's like Batman with Wolverine Claw. Like that's the Iron Lantern, all that kind of stuff. Amalgam was the squish them together one.
and then we also talked, or I mentioned DC versus Marvel.
There's
That
DC
was another big.
versus there's DC versus Marvel, which was like kind of individual like pairings and sort of fights. Um, there's the big like Marvel DC crossover with like Darkseid and the Grandmaster and the different like objects of power that they have to collect in each other's universes, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That one's kind of fun. I sort of enjoy that one. That's a four part story. I think I'm going to throw out there though that I think the best one is the X-Men Teen Titans
Yeah.
crossover. I think that's Claremont, X-Men and crossing over the Teen Titans. It's where Robin and Jubilee have like kind of like a thing. I think that's probably the best one because the vibes of those teams really mesh well, like all the drama and the interpersonal stuff and the like you trying to find your own way sort of thing. Like I don't know. To me, it's that one. You have to pick now, though.
There is, I can't remember if it was the larger, like Darkseid Grandmaster one, or if it was just the individual battle crossover. But there was one that had Flash and Quicksilver swapped Earths, and
Right. I think that's that big crossover one.
okay. And so I remember like that one really stood out. I mean, I've read them all, but it's been 12, 15 years now. And the other one, this one was DC versus Marvel, and this one is probably going to win for me. It was Batman and Captain America fighting, and they were sparring and going back and forth before they finally both realized, kind of without talking, that they shouldn't be fighting each other, that there was something bigger going on.
I think that's also that big crossover
Okay.
one with the Grandmaster in that, because I think they both realized the other one's like pulling punches. It's like, this isn't like, they're clearly not a villain. They don't want to be fighting, like, and they're skilled enough. They're skilled enough to recognize that in each other. I think that's in that one. There's also a one shot called Darkseid, Galactus, the Hunger, which is sort of interesting. There's a few. There was a period of time there where they crossed over a bunch, and there was I always forget who was implicated in it, but there was like a time where I think they were, because they both needed the help. I think they were talking about doing like a stunt where they would like exchange characters. Like Marvel would give DC a character and they wouldn't be in Marvel anymore. And DC would give Marvel a character in return. They wouldn't be in DC anymore. And if I'm not mistaken, the characters that may have been on the thing was like She-Hulk and Martian Manhunter or like something like that. There was a period of time where they might have just fully switched universes.
Wild.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was it for Reddit. Now we're going to the doc scored.
Oh shit! Fuck.
Going to the doc scored.
Yep. Oh shit! I already did fucking anti-hero, didn't I? Who put the docs in the doc scored? No, I've done that. I'm looking around like, this is gonna help. This is movies. None of this is gonna help me at all.
Going to the doc score.
There we go. The doc scored.
Judges will allow it. All right.
Oh, thank God. Thank God.
Yes, you've escaped to fight another day. From the doc scored, first question comes from Bruno. Arguably, the best single run of Dr. Fate was the DeMatteis one, with Eric and Linda Strauss realizing the potential of the character as a conjoining of a male and female side. What is your take on that series?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very strong series. I mean, I think the thing I like, I mean, it starts with a 4-issue miniseries, which is the handoff between Kent Nelson and Eric and Linda Strauss. And it introduces Anti-Fate, the sort of Lord of Chaos, who comes back in the actual run. All of that stuff starts in, what's the guy's name? Dr. Stoner. That starts in that 4-issue miniseries and that goes into the run that follows after. The thing that I love about it is, more than any other real version of Dr. Fate, is it really lives in a kind of like spooky Twilight, kind of, not Twilight like the movies, but like the time between night and day. It really lives in like a sort of Hellblazer kind of vibe, or like even Swamp Thing. Like it feels a little bit more like a Vertigo book. Like it's dark corridors. It's like Lovecraftian kind of like design of monsters and stuff like that. Like that Dr. Fate, blue and gold, but is like fighting these like sort of terrifying kind of creatures of the night. And I feel like you get different modes of Dr. Fate and they have their place. I love superhero Dr. Fate. I think he's so cool. I like, wise sorcerer Dr. Fate, who even in a Justice League Dark book that can kind of skew kind of horror-y, he comes in, but usually when he comes in, it's like a sort of beacon, it's like, oh, thank God the superhero one of us is, like there's sort of that almost a feeling of relief a little bit. And they play with that in the Tynan Justice League Dark, when he shows up and then they go like, actually, he's not on our side. They play with that a little bit. But the thing that's interesting that is about that DeMatteis is really the visuals, like that is a book that is like heavily inked and shaded in that kind of very sort of 90s way. I always bring up Phil Hester just because he's the first one that comes to mind. It's not Phil Hester, but it always makes me think of that kind of blocky sort of thing. Or like Mike Mignola or something like that. Like it makes me think of all of that kind of style. There's a real Hellboy aesthetic, I would say, to that Dr. Fate book. And I think it's interesting that way because it's such a departure from Golden Age Dr. Fate, from Justice League Dr. Fate, from the JSA, like the Hector Hall one that we get. All of those are such different beasts. And it's really, I think, the only Dr. Fate series that really looks at like how terrifying magic is and the idea of like the Lords of Chaos, that's not just like a pleasant name to have. Like, they're terrifying. They'll rip reality apart, you know? And I think that's the only book that actually really nails that aesthetic. And I think that's a big part of why it works. Not to mention the fact that the Eric and Linda Strauss, I mean, the Eric and Linda Strauss thing is kind of fraught in its own way because he's her stepson. She's a kid, or he's a kid, and she's like, is this kid kind of fucking hot? And then the kid gets like artificially aged up, and she's like, so it's fine now, right? And like, that's kind of weird. And then they kind of do like a firestorm merge sort of thing. And Eric gets kind of out of commission. She has to be fate by herself. Naboo like possesses the dead Kent Nelson's body to be their mentor and stuff. Like, there's a lot of interesting pieces to that book. Some more interesting than others, but to me, the biggest strength of it is the visual. It's just really like haunting.
All right. I have nothing to add, so we're just gonna.
Have you read it? Any of it?
I have not read that run of Dr. Fate. Like,
I would read that 4-issue miniseries, which is technically like I think the first volume of Dr. Fate. I would read that. You know, it gives you the total vibe of where that series goes. It introduces Eric and Linda. It introduces Anti-Fate, like what's his name, Typhon, the Lord of Chaos. It introduces like quite a few elements that kind of come back through that series. But it's the death of Kent Nelson, you know, the handing off of that and everything. Yeah. Very, very good if you can track it down.
I'll have to look for it. Okay, next question. Coming from Cosmic DM. Which would you rather happen? Another Trump presidency, or Lex Luthor comes to life and becomes president?
Luthor.
Yep, 1000%.
I mean, unequivocally Luthor. Here's the thing. Did a bunch of people vote for Luthor? Did he win as a third-party candidate? Yes. Did people immediately turn on them when they found out he was a criminal again? Yes. I would kill for that to be the reality. When confronted with the idea that someone is a criminal, we should turn on them. If it's
for all of Luthor's faults, which are many, let's not pretend otherwise. He puts humanity first. That's always been a big thing for him, is he puts humanity first.
Yeah, I mean, there's a weird counter argument buried in there that he's just a slightly bigger scope xenophobe. Like, instead of the like America first, where it means like white America, that he's just like humanity worldwide, which I guess is better. But in a world,
I was very clear with what I said.
It only works in humanity. Our world. It only works in our world where like humanity's all there is. Because on his world, he's just a different kind of racist.
Oh, 1000%.
Yeah. I would take Luthor though, because I mean, listen, Trump's front businesses are like slum housing and like ripping up wetlands to put in golf courses. Luthor's front businesses are like community developments and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, the dude's evil, but like he built subsidized housing.
Yeah, community housing, renewable energy, like actually doing things to make the world better.
If it came down to a literal, you can only have one or the other, it's obviously Luthor. It must be. You know?
Yes. All right. Next question from Mullet Overlord. What character do you most want Tom King to write, and what character do you least want him to work on?
I just want to start this off by saying, when it first came out, I read the first couple of issues of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And I don't know if it was just the mood I was in, or because it was monthly and I wasn't keeping track of the story after a couple of issues. I just like fell off. I was like, I do not get this. I don't like it. And then I just read it because everyone was like, this is amazing. And I was like, what was I not like? I must have just been out of my mind. So I just went and got the trade and read it. And it's so fucking good. That's just like not too long ago, rather. I finally read it. And it's
the writing was
so
great,
fucking good.
And it was a beautiful book. just the art was exquisite.
I forget which issue it is, issue 5 or 6, where it's like the many deaths of Krypton kind of thing, where it's like Krypton explodes, but then there's Argo City, and then a bunch of people die from poisoning, and then they fix that, but then there's not very many of them left, and then it's like, no, like our shield broke and stuff like the layers of trauma and tragedy. Like, do find a way to make, we talk about that thing where it's like Superman has like this level of tragedy that's like theoretical because he has no memory of Krypton. He just knows it's gone. Batman watched his parents die. Martian Manhunter watched his whole species die. But then Supergirl, it's like, and she watched it happen 3 times, basically. Like in 3 waves, she watched it happen. And I do kind of like that sort of escalation a little bit of like the tragic origin, and like with Supergirl kind of on top. And that being such a like a show of her strength and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, all of those little moments, like her teaching how to like wash her hands, and her helping like the guy with all the graves and shit, and like, yeah, I mean, really
heartbreaking.
I mean, heartbreaking. And I can't pronounce her name, but Bilquis Evely, like that art in that book is outrageous.
Yes.
I don't know what was wrong with me when it was coming out. I mean, it's one of the best books I've ever read. It's great.
Okay, so what character should? So we've got Human Target that he's wrapping up now.
Well, he's wrapping up Human Target, but Danger Street is just starting, and that has like a big weird cast, including like
it does.
The Creeper and like kind of odd character. I think they're all characters that appeared in like first issue special or something like that. There's like a pattern to them, but
yeah.
What is a character that I think Tom King should write? Do you have one for this?
I do,
or one he should stay away from.
I got okay. So stay away from. I have one for both, and stay away from. It's a strange one because it was actually the first character that came to mind as a new character for him to tackle. Slam Bradley. And yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, just a quick word from our sponsor.
Thank you for our sponsors. Yes.
Yeah, Slam Bradley, period. What? Slam them up. Sorry, go on.
But no, I thought of Slam Bradley, and I thought of The Question, both of them. I'm like, no, he just did Human Target. That is a detective story, and that's really where those 2 characters would shine. And so I think staying away from a character like that for now. But here's my pitch for Tom.
Is he not on that book that is going to have Slam Bradley in it, or does it like that kind of Gotham? The early days Gotham book, or whatever.
Gotham Year One or whatnot,
or something like that. Isn't there a book that has Slam Bradley as like a main character? Is that not Tom King?
Oh, I don't know. While I look this up, here's my pitch.
Okay.
So we've gone Supergirl, like we've gone outer space. We've had the Celestial with the New Gods, right? We've had the street level with Human Target. We've covered pretty much everything Tom King has.
Right.
Warlord. I want him to tell the story of how he ended up in Skartaris and came to power as Warlord.
I'm not sure how it works in Danger Street. I think Warlord is in there, but I doubt that it's like a full Skartaris story. But I mean, certainly, God, we were just talking about that Supergirl book, had such a fantasy element to it. Like I do think there's a world where there's a great Skartaris or Warlord story, like a Travis Morgan story that Tom King could write. Yeah.
You are absolutely correct.
Am I?
Tom King's turn to bring back Slam Bradley in Gotham City Year One. Art. Hold on. This gets better. Art by Phil Hester.
Oh, shit. Well, there you go. Good. I won't need to just use him as a reference for it. I can just talk about him. Interesting. God. I mean, here's the other kind of crazy thing is the Supergirl story is the kind of the Tom King story that breaks the mold, where it's like not it has sad moments, but it's a very like hopeful, very optimistic, very kind of beautiful story. Not like by the way, Adam Strange is a war criminal. By the way,
This whole story is an allegory for suicide.
Yeah. It's not one of those. So it does kind of blow open the like Tom King make a sad story but this character sort of trope. Let's see, a character I would want to see Tom King do that he hasn't already done. And we're playing to type here. It's maybe not original enough, but maybe like Sinestro. And I say that because kind of a character who is, Tom King has all that kind of like the CIA like insight and stuff like that. A character who is like seen horrors maybe I'm just describing I'm just describing Strange Adventures, I guess. It would just be a sort of a retread of those themes and stuff, but maybe Sinestro would be interesting. A character I wouldn't want to see Tom King do at all. Sorry, I'm changing my mind. We get weird Doom Patrol a lot lately, Morrison, Way, Pollock, all of those runs of Doom Patrol are like weird Doom Patrol. But there's also just sad Doom Patrol, and some of those runs tackle it too. But a Tom King Doom Patrol, I could kind of get behind for like a short amount of time. Like, just the kind of like we're freaks sort of like element of it, I think. A character I would not want to see Tom King do. I know he was in there because Tom King did his Batman run, but I think I wouldn't want to see him. No, that's not true. I was going to say Nightwing, but I fucking liked Grayson. Grayson was good. Shit. And he did it already too. Fuck. Who do I not want to see him do?
Could he do Aquaman?
Yeah. I mean, I guess my big thing would be, I would have said like female characters in general, but then that Supergirl book was really fucking good. It just depends what Tom King you get, like it's really up in the air sometimes. Well, shit. I was gonna say he hasn't done a time travel story, but Heroes in Crisis sort of has an element of that, sort of. Fuck me. I mean, truly, I think Wonder Woman. I don't know that Wonder Woman makes a brief appearance in the Batman run. But I don't know that I'd want to. I don't know that I'm interested in King's take on Wonder Woman.
No, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Well, shit, it's actually a lot harder because he keeps doing these like ensemble books with weird characters. It's like, oh, he's actually working on that.
Yeah. Well, that was our last question. So you know what time
Holy
it is.
Shit. Oh now my God.
Everybody's favorite game. Can you guess the name of that character based on how somebody who does not read comic books can describe that character to us? If you don't know how this game is played, I sent a photo of a DC character to my partner who does not read comic books, nor does she care for them. And she sent back 4 clues describing that character.
I mean, I've got to imagine she now maybe actively dislikes comic books because it's ruining her anniversary.
That'll be fun.
I've really replaced Richard with a different Richard this week. Yeah. I love that. And? Actually, I say that I've done it too. I think if you go back on the Patreon, I think there's definitely an episode I made my wife record with me on Valentine's Day.
There 1,000% is, yes.
I think I made her watch Supergirl, the movie, on Valentine's Day, and then record an episode with me. So I'm not one to talk. I also do this.
We're wonderful partners, all 3 of us. That's all I'm getting.
We're all, yeah, we're
Wait, hold on. I said that wrong. We have all found wonderful partners. There we
Good,
go.
yeah, good amendment. Good.
Yep,
I
good
approve.
amendment.
Seconded.
Are you ready?
I mean, as much as I ever am. Yeah.
First clue.
Okay.
Flaming, both hair and sexuality.
Okay. Firestorm. Firebrand. Firehawk. uh, Wildfire. Fire. Next clue, please.
Next clue. Chiseled face.
Chiseled face. Flaming hair. And personality. Snowflame. Starfire. Next clue, please.
Emo magician vibes.
Emo magician vibes. Well, who's an emo magician? Clarion the Witch Boy, the Wizard, Abracadabra, Zachary Zatara, Sargon the Sorcerer. Is it Sargon while he's burning alive? Is that the image? Ah, shit, that would have been funny. Last clue.
Last clue. On his way to try out for the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Wave Rider? Oh, shit. Damn it, that would have been a good one. Rainbow Raider? Crazy Quilt? Flaming hair and personality.
Flaming hair and sexuality.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Chiseled face.
Right.
Emo magician vibes. And on his way to try out for the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Emo magician vibes. That's the toughest one to reconcile with the rest of it. Emo magician vibes. Oh man. It's not, is it Harm? Is this gonna bother me?
Nah, I don't know.
Shit. Fuck. Is it Effigy? I don't know. Who is it? Oh, you sent it to me. Okay, let's have a look here.
I did. I sent it to you.
Have a look at the image here. Is this fucking Shade the Changing Man?
Yes, it is.
Son of a bitch, it's Rack Shade. Yeah, with the coat instead of just the M vest thing. Fuck.
Yeah.
It's fucking Rack Shade. God damn it. You know what? Red hair, crazy coat. Decent like, clues. Decent clues.
I mean, and I'm getting some like hardcore emo magician vibes off that. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's got mind freak energy for sure.
I did have to explain. I tried. I had to try to explain Rack Shade after I sent the image. It did not go well.
Yeah, well, there's a reason that this game isn't guess the character and then explain them.
Right.
Oh, well, thank you, Josh, for filling in today.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do it as always.
Sorry. No,
week,
you go. You do it. I like this.
So For if you want to send us questions for next week's episode, you can send those to, or I guess, what are we talking about next week?
Well, hopefully next week we'll be back on track with Alex Jaffe. That's the hope, but we'll see.
And then we've got to be getting close to Docmas. So get those questions in for Docmas.
Yeah, absolutely. You can send questions in for Docmas, of course. Just general questions about DC, about us, whatever. We're recording Docmas on December 4th this year. So, so just send your general questions. I've got to start building out those episodes and stuff like that. And then also, we are recording our Lord of the Rings miniseries as promised, because we got to 200 reviews. Thank you. So send your questions about like Tolkien mythology as well. It could be about anything. It could be about the books, could be about the movies, could be about the show, could be about characters, could be about places, could be about concepts. It doesn't matter. Send Tolkien questions, send as many of them as you want, because we'll basically make as many episodes as we more or less have questions for. And yeah, you can send those along as well.
And you can send those questions into our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
Twitter,
at Dr. DC,
Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast,
Reddit,
r/Dr_DC.
You can always send us an email, much like we got today.
That's right, drdcpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can call our voicemail. Leave us a voicemail. We haven't gotten one of those in a very long time.
Yeah, the doc phone is always open. 208-917-3238. That's 208-917-DCEU if you're nasty.
All right. Also, we have we don't. I don't host that one, but the Doc and Richard have a whole other podcast.
That's right. Ghostfacers is a Supernatural rewatch. We're going through every single episode of the CW Supernatural. We talk about real world monster lore, behind the scenes stuff about the show. It's a ton of fun over there. And of course, if you want just more of us talking comic books, we've got a Patreon, patreon.com/DrDC. So $1, $5, $7 level. They all give you access to the Doc Squad, our awesome fan community. And at the higher levels, you get bonus episodes, theme polls, etc., etc. And it all helps to support us.
Yes. And I believe Golden Age patrons also get to help pick a theme for a show each month, which is always fun to be involved in.
That's right. Yeah, I haven't double checked, but it looks like the final episode of November is going to be about Infinite Crisis.
So nice, light, easy topic.
Something super easy.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure how it's going for the December one yet, but I'll have to check that one. But yeah, send questions for Docmas, send questions for Lord of the Rings. You can send Infinite Crisis questions. I'm pretty sure that one is going to win. Thank you again, Josh, for jumping in and helping out.
Absolutely. Always happy to help. All right, guys. Y'all have a wonderful night now.
Ciao, ciao. Adios.
All the superheroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.